GOAT conversations are objective. There are not really any other ways to put it. There are metrics and numbers that can be put in place to measure such things, but things like timing, setting, competition, and legacy are harder to measure because of the unreliableness of the human eye. One of the first convos that come to mind when someone hears this is probably the NBA one. And the two likeliest culprits of or sides that you're trying to pick between are going to be between Jordan and LeBron. Jordan's side is always going to have the 6-0 finals record, the MVPs, the scoring titles, the dream team, the last dance that reminded everyone of his greatness. LeBron has the longevity, the 8 straight finals, the recency bias, the look that people don't have to remember what he's done. The fact of the matter is he just did it, like yesterday to some of us. The scoring records, the scoring record, being the youngest to achieve every great scoring benchmark in the league, even with the game reaching new heights as far as the scoring is going. It will take an incredible career with a great scorer at a great pace, decades, to come close to what he is doing now. And these are just two people that the conversation should probably hinge on. But the thing is, with that conversation, people can still make arguments about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Will Chamberlain, Bill Russell, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Oscar Robinson, Shaquille O'Neal, Hakeem Olajuwon, Tim Duncan, Kobe Bryant. These are people who I will say when I talk to you, I can't. If you give me an argument, I can say, okay, I understand where you're coming from. I don't agree with you, but I understand where you're coming from. Hockey as well. Wayne Gretzky is probably the greatest of all time, but Gordie Howe has something to say about it. So does Mario Lemieux. And what Sidney Crosby and Alexander Ovechkin have done in their careers can't be ignored. And don't get me started on baseball with a whole steroid era that kind of lacks out and takes out a bunch of people who should probably be considered for it, but they're being ignored, and so we won't get into that. Football depends on who you root for mostly. Mostly people would agree on Tom Brady, but don't get caught cheating. So that opens up the whole QB conversation to Manning, Marino, Breeze, Montana, Mahomes. We'll also have a lot to say about it before he's done. I say all this to say, my point being, the GOAT conversation is complicated, except for one. In one sport, with one instance, there is one greatest team of all time. The greatest team in the 21st century of college football. And it's the University of Miami Hurricanes, 2001. It's no one else, and I'll tell you why. Hey, what's going on, 499 fans? It's your boy Music Nerd, and this is a mini podcast with your boy Music Nerd. Let's get to it. What's up, everyone? It's your favorite Music Nerd, and today I am talking about the GOAT team of all time, the 01 Hurricanes. And why, you ask? Okay. A lot of people are saying that Indiana is the greatest team of all time. No, just no. Indiana is great, and they deserve the national championship as much as it pains me to say that. You know, I know there are rumblings about play calling and knowing it before the game is played and everything, and Miami adjustments just not quick enough. But that being said, all that stuff, no matter what it said, no, they are not the best team of all time. No, they're not better than 01 Hurricanes, and I'm going to break down why. And the way I'm going to do it is go through every team in chronological order that has been said and that people have said is better than 01 Hurricanes and why they are not. And why this is the greatest team of the 21st century. As far as all time goes, that is me, but I was not born in the 40s, so I just don't know. But these teams I can go through. There's no recency bias either. I'm old enough to know about all these teams I'm going to talk to. So first one's first. The first one came just 3 years after the first Hurricanes. 04 USC. Historically great offense. Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush, 2 Heisman winners. Lindell White, Dwayne Jarrett, all incredible collegiate players, but fell short of the offensive firepower that Miami carried, in my opinion. This is my opinion. But I say this because they played in a much weaker division. Defensively, incredible, but untested, in my opinion. Lofa Tatupu was the only player on that team that had an NFL career. This team loses out, in my opinion, to Miami, where a lot of these teams are going to lose out, is depth. Now, they have some great players. Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush, and Lindell White. That's incredible. Like their backfield alone, that's what people are going to be like, well, I mean, there's not a greater backfield in all of collegiate sports. I disagree with you. The 01 Hurricanes backfield. Clinton Portis, Willis McGahee, Frank Gore, Najee Davenport, Jarrett Payton, all right there in the same backfield. That's better than USC's backfield. And if you're going to get the theme, and that's what they're going to be the theme here for most of these, it's depth. Depth is what separates this team from it. And also, too, this 04 USC team, I think maybe there's a better argument if they played a better team in their championship game. They dismantled a very much not game Oklahoma team, in my opinion. They should have played a very much probably game and pre SEC dominance 04 Auburn team that also went undefeated. And maybe they have a better shot. But then again, they lost to the next team on our list, 05 Texas. So in the lead up to the 04, in the lead up to the 05 Texas game, the greatest college football game of all time, and I have to agree, I do think this is the greatest college football game of all time, and I've seen some doozies. One of the things that happened was if the 04 USC team, the 05 USC team was put up against the greatest teams of all time. And one of those greatest teams of all time was the 01 Hurricanes. And I think the only team that the USC did not beat in a simulation was the 01 Hurricanes. But it was funny to me because I kept thinking on the way up to this game that no matter what, maybe USC is a better overall team. And for me, that was an if. I felt that Texas may be raw defensively, but I thought they were more talented defensively. They may not win this game because they don't have the best player. And that's really what it comes down to. 05 Texas, Vince Young. He and maybe Cam Newton were the most incredible one-game wonders you could think of when it comes to it. Some of them could argue Johnny Manziel, but Manziel couldn't get past the entire SEC. Young and Newton could. Newton did. But I digress. This Texas team is actually very, very talented, and they had a talented defense and a freshman Jamal Charles on their offense, but not much more on their offense to speak of. That's what kind of makes this more incredible. And though USC may beg to differ, it wasn't just Young that beat them that night in 06. This team was opportunistic, smart, knew how to play to his strengths and exploit others' weaknesses. I think they're better than 04 Trojans because the teams were literally carbon copies in the same, and they played each other in 05-1. That's why I would give the edge to 05. And I think this actually would be a team, I think, 10 out of 10 times that actually think Texas would get a game or two from the Hurricanes because of Vince Young. But the Hurricanes, in my opinion, are a different story on a one-game basis. The reason why I say the Hurricanes are better is Ed Reed. Yes, the Trojans did not have Ed Reed. And while Young is incredible, and I think there are going to be times when he gets him, but I think that Ed Reed is the smartest player to ever play the game, let alone safety. So I think he's able to adjust with those strengths and able to find a way to contain Young and thus make it easier for Miami to attack him and contain him. Now, Miami historically has had issues with running quarterbacks. And Vince Young wasn't just a running quarterback. He was 6'5", 230 pounds with a rocket for an arm. Cam Newton came about 5 years later and did a bit more accurately than he did, but I don't think anyone had seen anyone quite like him at that point, and I think that's what USC found out on that night. Even though USC should have won that game, they're up by 12 with about 6 minutes to go. I'll tell you this, if Miami's up by 12, 6 minutes to go, Miami's not losing that game. I really don't care who it is. So that's one thing I will say. The one thing I think that is the equalizer here, I think that, Texas has the best player in the field. I think Vince Young is one of the best players of all time, but I do think Ed Reed, Jonathan Vilma, DJ Williams, that factor, that speed. You got these guys who are incredibly smart, run that 4.5 speed as well. I think they'll be able to contain him for a one-game thing. Now, I'll say this. I think if you play this game 4 times, maybe Texas gets 3 or 4. They don't get the majority. Miami still does because Young is an X factor, but I still will put the 01 Miami team. Now, this next team, 08 Gators. Now, I put this on here as kind of like a favor to me as my dad. I am a Gator spawn. I am half Gator, half Cane, all Cane fan. Love Gators basketball. That's my love. I even love Gators basketball more than I love Canes basketball. Sorry, y'all. I know this is software podcast, but I gotta tell the truth. I will be rooting for the Gators this March Madness, and I will be rooting for the Canes too. Love them and everything, but Canes basketball, Gators basketball is one of my first love. That being said, Gators football, it's definitely Canes football first. That's what I always get. And I'll mention the one at 08 Gators because of they have one of the best college rosters ever assembled. I think it's the second best college roster up to the 01. I think it's better than 05 Texas. I think it's better than USC, and I think it's better than teams we're about to talk about later. You just talk about the speed, the power balance. This is one of my favorite teams of all time. I'm not going to even lie. I've always said my dad's a Gator. I don't think I want the Gators to succeed against SEC, just not against Miami. I truly do. I think one of the things about this team is like It's Percy Harvin. That's the monster here. I think that is an X factor in this type of game. Percy Harvin, you can line him up anywhere. He was just one of he's. I think he was just a more efficient, better version of how a better way to use how they used Reggie Bush. But I think they didn't have to use him like a Reggie Bush because they had more talent around him offensively. Even though, yeah, I said that I think that USC had one of the best college offenses of all time. I think that the fact that Tebow didn't just have to sit back there and pass, he ran as well as he did. And even though people are like, oh, all he did is run, no, Tebow had one of the best pass efficiencies in SEC history. You can look it up as well. So even with that weird way that he threw the ball efficiently and rarely turned the ball over. He only had, if I'm not mistaken, through 3 years of starting, 4 years of playing, I think he only had 20 interceptions in total. I think like 4 of them came in one game. So like, dude was efficient with the ball when it came to it, but he had a lot of people to go to. Now the thing is, what makes this team different is their defense was stacked. You have Carlos Dunlap, Brandon Spikes, Joe Hayden, all future first round picks, all pro level players at their positions. These guys were good. I think why the 0-1 Miami would beat this team, I think one Miami is more disciplined. This team had to lose for it to become its best version of itself. This team had to lose to Ole Miss in a game. In my opinion, Ole Miss didn't even belong on the field with them. I think Ole Miss ended up getting ranked, and I think because of that win, they became ranked really highly the next year, and then kind of sputtered out a little bit. I think they ended up being top 20, but they needed a wake up call. Most of the teams on this list don't need a wake up call, but this team did. Now I have to put it on there because of the dominance that they showed after they had that wake up call, and because it's a talented team, and I think it is a more talented roster, but I do have to put it at the bottom of the list because they lost the game. I mean, dominance is one thing that's going to be level and key in everything that you'll see here when you talk about it. Dominance was everywhere on this list. So that's one thing we're going to get to the next team. So 09 Alabama, absurdly talented, and you want to put Alabama teams here, but the thing is about Alabama teams, the 09 team, in my opinion, it kind of went push against the 08 Gator team. And then the next year when they came back that 10 year, and I think that's when they could have been as absurdly the dominant team. But then they lost 3 games that year, so I kind of pushed them off the list. Now the next team that I will give the real one, and then this is who Florida State fans are always going to clamor about, the 13 Florida State team. Highest points of difference of all time, still even to this day, which is incredible. That is an incredible stat. A lot of incredible things to say, but it's been long enough to make this evaluation simple. They just weren't as talented as the 01 team. And they would say, well, what about the dominance? What about this? What about that? All these teams on this list were dominant. You're not going to be on this list if you weren't dominant. So, like, you're going to see a couple of the facts. If you look down here at this here, you're going to read those facts for me, and you're going to see how dominant this 01 team was. And these are things that no other team has even done. So don't even worry about the 13 Florida State fans. I told you what they've done. Highest point differential of all time. And I know what's been talked about, we used to seed our players in the fourth quarter and this and that. All these teams sat their players in the second half and fourth quarters. All these teams did that because that's how much dominant they were. And so one thing that is different, I think, between the 01 team and a lot of these teams is the depth. Florida State, and I think it's been long enough that we can say, they just weren't as talented as the 01 team. Now, as much as I think they ended up having 20 players drafted off this team, only one player is still playing in the league to this. Only 2 players are still playing to the league this day: Jalen Ramsey and Jameis Winston. Now, Jalen Ramsey's a hell of a player to boast. Jameis Winston's a hell of a player to boast, in my opinion, too. There's been a lot of great things about his career, but there have been a lot of downs about his career. But they're nowhere close to 38 players drafted. They're nowhere close to 17 players drafted in the first place. And you can say all the things you want to say about when it comes to dominance and everything like that. But in the end, Miami's just a better team. And I think when it comes down to it, you have to talk about you have to get into deeper metrics when you're comparing these teams because dominance is always there. So one thing you could say, they may have one Hall of Famer off this team, Jalen Ramsey, right? Miami already has 2, Ed Reed and Andre Johnson, and probably a third, and I'll probably guarantee a third in Frank Gore, possibly a fourth in Vince Wilfork. And then, if Sean Taylor didn't get killed, we probably talk about a 5th. But Sean Taylor did die, so unfortunately you can't talk about that. But College Football Hall of Famer, definitely. He's already there. So as great as Jameis greatest Jameis has there been, he's not a Hall of Fame player. So that's just not going to happen for him. So let's move on to the next one. 18 Clemson Tigers. Freshman Trevor Lawrence with an incredible defense and a balanced effort. First 15-0 squad that destroyed Alabama in the championship game. Dominance all across the board. Like I said, all these teams are dominant and everything. But they still haven't lived up to the hype of Miami's legacy. They're just not even really close. We don't know what Trevor Lawrence had a great year this past year. Finalist for MVP. Dexter Lawrence, incredible player. But we don't know. But all the other players that were on this team that got drafted that were supposed to be great. Christian Wilkins, we're not sure what's going to happen with him. You know, as Dolphins fan, I love Christian Wilkins, but things got weird when he left. You thought there are some great receivers that were on this team. They're not really producing at the moment right now, like Deion Kane. Unfortunately, had that huge neck injury that kind of derailed his career a little bit, so we're not sure what's going on with him. Then they had this Isaiah Simmons, who was supposed to be a hybrid defensive player that was incredible, that made a lot of big difference in that game. Just bounced around in the league, hadn't been able to find a home for him. Then really, you should have been able to with his talent. So it's kind of like, all right, you look back at this team, it's like, well, probably not. Then one of the biggest names that you're going to hear, and I think one of the reasons why you make a video like this, the 19 LSU Tigers, the greatest passing offense of all time, and that's just not close. There's no argument there. He threw 60 touchdowns. Joe Burrow threw 60 touchdowns. You have two of the best receivers doing it in Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. They're the two best receivers in the league. I don't even really think it's argument-wise. I think these are the two most talented receivers in the league. I think that is not really close. I think that you can say they're receivers who are more productive than maybe they are, but those are by far the two best receivers in the league. It's not even close. So they were both over 1,500 yards. So to put that in perspective, and my University of Miami had some incredible receivers. Both of the yardage they had in that season would be single season Miami records by at least 250 yards. That's incredible, and I have to give the flowers to that. LSU Tigers offense would give. I think it's the only offense on this list that would give Miami's defense some problems. But I think because Ed Reed is Ed Reed, and because LSU's defense was mediocre at best, I think Miami still wins this game. I think one thing that people fail to realize is how dominant Miami's defense was. And one of the facts that you'll see down there is that if Miami's offense had failed to score a touchdown this entire season, this team still would have went 8-4 with a challenge for the Big East crown and a BCS bowl berth. And for those of y'all who are a bit older, that means they would have basically won. We would have challenged for a New Year's Six bowl, basically in the old 4-team CFP format, because they would have won a power conference. That's how incredible their defense was. But their offense scored over 40 points a game. I think their offense with Andre Johnson, Clinton Portis, Frank Gore, Willis McGahee, Najee Davenport, Jeremy Shockey. I think that offense would have absolutely destroyed that defense. And I do think Ed Reed would have been able to get a couple. I do think Ed Reed and the defensive backfield, which was incredible, one of the best defensive backfields of all time, is one of the best passing efficiency defenses of all time. I think it would have been a great chess match. I do think that LSU puts up 21 points. I think Miami puts up 38, in my opinion. And maybe I'm hating, and maybe it's opinion, but I think Miami is too balanced of a team for the LSU Tigers. I think that what they were able to do was outscore everyone, and I think they're just not going to be able to outscore Miami because their defense is just going to be too good, in my opinion. So I'm just saying, I think Andre Johnson and Jeremy Shockey alone get 300 yards receiving. I mean, I just think they have a fucking field day. Excuse my language. So now to the final team that people are talking about. 25 Indiana, probably the most disciplined, probably best coached team on this list that I've seen, but also by far the least talented team on this list. I think we can even say that now with their metric. They are the least talented team ever to win a national championship, and I think that's one that's speaking to how incredibly well coached they are, how also too the metrics when it comes to evaluating talent is bogus as well. And also too, I think how good of a team they are and how together they were. But also, let's be very real. They almost and probably should have lost to Miami. Miami played terrible that game. That was one of Miami's worst games of the season. I'll say that. The way they played offensively in the first half, they could not get out of gear basically. But the way they fought back, the way they kept going, and their defense kept them in it. If Miami had played like that for 60 minutes, Miami would have been the national champion. And I think that's what knocks off 25 Indiana from this list as well. But also, too, I just think that when it comes to the talent and the depth of it, we are not far along. We are not far along enough in their evolution to really come to it. So, there you have it. In my opinion, humble opinion, of course, the 0-1 Hurricanes are not just the best teams of the 2000s. They are the best team of the 2000s. Of the century 2000s. It's not about dominance so much. All these teams were dominant. The Indiana team was dominant. The second most dominant team of all time, apparently, when it comes to scoring. But for me, it's more so about how these teams stand out when it comes to the other things, the intangibles. All these teams were special in their right. All these teams are special in their seasons. All these teams won national championships for a reason. They're able to come together at the right time. But what makes the 0-1 team different is the depth. What makes the 0-1 team different is the names that are sitting on your bench and weren't able to get playing time because there's people ahead of them. I'm sorry, when you sit someone like Sean Taylor, who looks like he was made, it looks like he was what video games were thinking of when they look at a human player. When you sit someone like Kellen Winslow Jr., who is your prototypical tight end, when you sit someone like Vince Wilfork, when you sit someone like Frank Gore, when you sit someone like Willis McGahee, when you sit someone like Andrew Roll, that means that the players that you have going are incredible. Can't be beat. Have this mentality of winning. They police themselves. So not only are they disciplined, not only are they focused, not only are they lasered into it, this is a team that won't be beaten. This is a team that it is not weak mentally because they kept their players who hadn't earned it yet on the bench and make them earn it. That's a different mentality. And a lot of these teams just didn't have that mentality. Especially like say the '08 Gators, they had to lose a game before they switched it on. I think that maybe the closest team to this mentality you could say is maybe it's the 13 Florida State Seminoles, but then you look at it, they're not as talented as the 0-1 team. Maybe it's the 19 LSU Tigers, but then their defense is not as good as this team. So there's always going to be these little things, these little arguments that people can say about it. Oh, they just didn't score as much. But then you talk about, well, no other team has gone up against two top 15 opponents and beat them 124-7 back-to-back weeks like Miami did. And what is he talking about? Number 15 Syracuse, number 7 Washington Huskies. Back-to-back weeks, 124-7, 59-0 against Syracuse. A Dwight Freeney-led Syracuse team as well. Yep, look it up. Dwight Freeney was on that Syracuse team. Didn't even get a pressure. Brian McKinney buried him. And then next week they played a Washington Husky team that just didn't belong on the field with Miami. They showed up and just showed them that. Like I said, if this offense went out and scored a touchdown, 8-4, still would have been what BCS won. But they averaged 5 touchdowns a game, 43 points. Like I said, 38 players drafted, 17 in the first round, a record that none of these teams can touch. The most combined NFL rushing yards by a combined backfield, Portis, McGahee, and Gore all have over 10,000 plus, with Gore second all time with 16,000 plus. And we're not even talking about Davenport and Peyton. Ed Reed, like I said, is always an X factor here. He can win these games with intelligence, the ability to read the game against someone like Burrow and Vince Young. Vilma and Williams, their speed. I think that's what really a lot of people were making these points. That team has never seen an RPO. Thing is, when you have linebackers with sub 4.5 speed, the RPO kind of becomes irrelevant because you have the speed to match it. And I think people are forgetting how good and how talented these Miami teams were. And it was because of their speed and their discipline and their way to get to it. They were coached well. They attacked the football incredibly. So, like I said, depth is always going to be the main thing that puts this team out of it. But also, too, when you look at it, the way they played on the field. No, you can't. Not even Indiana, as good as they were. Not even Indiana beat two top 15 opponents together, 124-7 in consecutive weeks. Not even Indiana did that. Not even Florida State did that. I think that is what is always going to separate this team. I think that's why the Hurricanes are always going to be the best team in the 2000s, and of course, in my opinion, the best team ever. But what do y'all think? say it in the comments. If Florida State fans, give me a real valid reason why that I cannot argue with that Florida State is better than the 0-1 Hurricanes. Maybe we could talk about it. And remember, I saw these teams in person. I saw the 13 Florida State Seminoles against the Miami Hurricanes that year, and I saw the 0-1 Hurricanes that year too. So try to convince an old man, basically, at this point, that your point is right. But hey, we'll see. So, all right, that's all I have to say on that subject. I'm sure that we'll be talking about it for years and years to come. I'm sure there's another team that's going to come around. Maybe it's another Miami team that comes around that can challenge it. Maybe we'll say that. But Music Nerd is out. Next time, I'll tell you why Dwayne Wade is the third best shooting guard of all time and why it's not close. See y'all soon. Peace. Podcast with your boy Music Nerd. Let's get to it. Hey, what's going on, 499 fans? It's your boy Music Nerd, and this is a mini podcast with your boy Music Nerd. Let's get to it.